Hello everyone, I'm Iman. In this and upcoming series of videos, we are going to build booking apps UI and UX using React and Tailwind CSS from scratch. In the home page on top, we have a responsive header with nice gradient which we created in the previous video. After that, we have a hero section and a search button. If we click on this, our full search bar is going to be visible, from which user can search their location, how many adults and children there will be, and a check-in and check-out field. We are going to use React Date Picker for this, a search and clear button. After that, we have some hotel cards with their name and location. On the bottom, we have a footer. And when we click on the search button, we will be directed to search page. On the left side, we have all of our filters. And on the right side, on top, we have some sort by options. And after that, we have cards with hotel details. And when we click on view more button, our hotel details page is going to show. And in here we have hotel name, star rating, location, hotel type, images, facilities, description, and on the bottom right we have a card from where user can select their check-in and check-out, adults and children, and after that we have a sign in to book button. If we click on this, we will be directed to sign in page, where we have email and password field and a sign in button. And in here, when we click on create an account link, we will be directed to register page. In here we have first name, last name, email, password, confirm password, and create account button. After we sign in, we have book now button. When we click on this, we will be directed to hotel booking page. On the left side, we have booking details card. On the right side, we have confirm your details card. And we use Stripe for this. We have first name, last name, email, price summary and payment detail field. Let's fill this and click on confirm booking saved. Now let's go to my bookings page where user can see the bookings they make, and for a booking we have a check-in and check-out dates and how many guests there will be, and a user can have their own hotel. Let's go to my hotels page. In here user have some information about their hotel and can add a new hotel. In here we have a form, hotel name, city, country, description, price per night, star rating, hotel type, facilities, guest, images from where user can select up to 6 images. We use Cloudinary for this and a save button. They can also view details and edit hotel details. And on home page, if we click on hotel card, they will be directed to hotel details page. And all of this project is going to be completely responsive. My hotels, bookings, search, sign in and register also. Let me mention we are only going to build its UI and UX, and I'm going to create small videos for each page or component. So let's get started. In this video we are going to build a hero section and this search bar using React and Tailwind CSS with some animation effects. For our hero section we have a heading and a paragraph. For our search bar, by default, search button is going to show, and when we click on this, a nice animation will happen. And for our search bar, we have our location input field from where user can search their location, and then we have a adult and children field with some restrictions. For example, there must be one adult, it can't be less than 1, and it can't be greater than 10. And same for our children, by default its value is 0 and it can't be less than 0, for example -1 or -2, and it can't be greater than 10. And for our check-in and checkout field, we used React Date Picker. If we select 3, and for our checkout, let's select 11, and if we click on this again, from 3 to 11 our date is selected. And after that we have a search and clear button. And we have created this snapbar in the previous video. You can watch it in my channel. We have created this with animation and transition effects. So if you are interested, you can check out my previous video. For our search bar also, it's completely responsive. On larger screens we have 3 columns. On medium screens we have 2 columns, and for our smaller screens we have 1 column, and we used grid for this. So without further ado, let's get started. Inside Visual Studio Code, we have created and set up this project using Vite in the previous video. For now, inside component, let's create a new file called hero.jsx, and let's create a component called hero arrow function return. As you can see, there's so much space in here. For that, let's go here and say 2, like this. And inside return we have our parent div and a container div, and inside it we have our h1, and in here we will say find your perfect stay. And after this h1 we have a paragraph, and in here let's say search on hotels worldwide for your dream vacation, like this. Now let's export this hero component because we need to import it inside our layout file. Export default hero. Let's import this hero component inside our layout file. After this snapbar, let's say hero from components and hero.jsx. Let's save it and open up our terminal. Let's go inside our this booking folder, and in here we will say npm run dev, and it will open up in our browser. When we click Ctrl and hover over it, click it. As you can see, we have our h1 and paragraph here. Now let's style them. Now let's go inside our hero.jsx. For our parent div, let's say class name, and we will give here our gradient. For that we will say bg gradient to right, so it will go to right side. For our starting color, we will use from keyword blue 950. The bigger our number is, the darker our color will be. And for our middle color, we will use VIA keyword. We will say blue 700. And to give it a last color, we will say to red 400. So it will start from blue 950 and it will end to red 400 and our middle color will be blue 700. Let's save it. As you can see, now our hero section also has a gradient. Now let's style our container div. Class name, let's say container. We have created this class inside our tailwind.config.js in our previous video. We give it padding. By default it will be 1 RAM on medium and above screen, 1.5 RAM, and on extra large screens our padding will be 2 RAM. Okay, let's close this and let's save it. Flex call. By default flex value will be row, so it will make our elements to horizontal, but when we say flex column it will make our elements in vertical. Okay, and let's also give here gap 2, so it will space out the elements inside it and these classes will be applied to its children. Now let's style our h1 class name. Our text will be white like this, and for our text let's say 4XL, and on larger screens and above our text will be 5XL. Let's make it bolder, semi-bold, and for our font let's give here serif like this. And for our heroes section, let's also give here some padding. It's too close to our navbar. After our gradient, let's say padding bottom will be 28 like this, and padding top let's say 8 like this. And now let's style our paragraph. Class name, it will also be white in color like this. Text LG, so it will make our text larger like this, and on smaller screen it's looking nice, but as you can see on larger screens it's too small, and as you can see on larger screens it doesn't fit well. Let's give here for our medium screens and above our text will be extra large. So on smaller and extra smaller devices our text will be large, but on medium screens and above our text will be extra large. So let's save it and expand it. As you can see, now on smaller screens our text is smaller, but on medium and above our text will be larger. And we did the same for our heading also. By default our text will be 4XL, but on larger and extra larger screens our text will be 5XL. And for our heading and paragraph it's not in the center. For that we will use here a class name called MX Auto. So it means margin on x-axis, so basically on left and right it will push our element center. Let's save it and see. Now it's all in the center. And now let's create our search bar. For that let's go to Project Explorer, and inside our components we will create a new file called searchbar.jsx. Let's expand them like this, and let's first create our search bar component. Const search bar equal arrow function return, and inside we have our form, and inside our form let's create our first div, and inside we are going to use a React icon. To able to use them you have to first install React icons package. We have already installed it. So in here let's say md travel explore like this. Let's import it. Import inside curly braces MD travel explore from React icons /MD like this. And for our icon, let's give here size 25. And after this icon, we will create an input. And its placeholder will be where are you going? Like this. And after our first div, we have our second div, and inside we have our adult and children field. For that, let's first create a label for our input, and it's going to be adult. And after this text, we have our input field. Its type will be number. And after this label, we have an other label for our children. Like this, children. And for it, we also need to create our input, and its type also will be number. Like this. Now let's save it and import it inside our layout. Remember our folder structure? We will import all our components inside layout, and we have imported this layout inside our app in here. So let's export this search bar component. Export default search bar and import it inside layout. After our hero, we will say search bar. Like this. Let's save it and see. As you can see, we have our React icon, our location field, and our adult and children field. And after these fields, we also need to have our date picker fields. For that, let's search here React date picker, and let's go in here. And in here it will give all information how we can use React date picker package. We first need to install it. Let's copy it. And inside our terminal, we will create a new terminal. And in booking, we will paste it and hit enter. It will install our React date picker package so that we can use it inside our project. It's installed. Now inside our search bar file, let's import our package. Import date picker from React date picker. And to use it, we need states, and we can use it using selected and change attribute. Now inside our file, before return statement, let's create our states. The first one will be check-in, set check-in equal use state. We need to import it like this, and by default its value will be new date. So it will take our current date, and after that we will have our checkout state, set checkout, use state, and its also default value will be new date like this. Now after our this label div, let's create here a new div, and inside let's use our date picker. We have imported this, and to use it inside this, it will also show us how to use it. We only need selected start date from where it will start, and also we need on change. So inside our date picker we will say selected check-in. We have created here our check-in and checkout states, and after this we will have another attribute on change, and in here we will select our current date and update it with our new state, set check-in and date, like this. And after this step we also need checkout field. For that we also use date picker, and selected will be checkout. And for our on change we will select current date and update it with new state, like this. Let's save it, and inside our app, as you can see, we have our date picker fields, but as you can see it doesn't have any styling. For that we also need to import this CSS file. Let's copy it, and after our date picker let's paste it. Now let's see. As you can see, now our date picker is here. Let's select here 2 and 10. Let's see. As you can see, it's not selecting our check-in and checkout dates. For that, inside our date picker, let's say here start date, to select our start date, and it will be check-in, and for our end date it will be checkout. And we also need to give them here start date, check-in, and our end date will be checkout. Let's save it and see. Let's refresh it from 3 to 5. Let's see. As you can see, now it's selected, and as you can see we can also select our previous dates. To avoid it, we also need to define here two attributes, min date and max date. For that, after our check-in and checkout states, let's say const min date equal new date, and for our max date also max date equal new date. And after this, let's take max date dot set full year, max date dot get full year plus 1. Let me explain this. So for our minimum date it will take our current date, but for our maximum, why we do this is because for our max date we need to select 1 year ahead of us. For example, if today is 4 September 2024, we can choose until 4 September 2025, and we can't select 2 years ahead of us. We can only select 1 year ahead of us. Now after this end date, we will say minimum date is minimum date, the one we have created just now, this one. And for max date attribute we have max date, and we also need it for our check-in. Let's say here min date is equal to minimum date and max date is max date, like this. Let's save it, and now as you can see, let's refresh it, and now we can select our previous month. And also as you can see, our date is October 2024, and for our checkout, if we go to October 2025, we can select that either, because we only set it to 1 year ahead of us. Okay, I hope you understand it now. Now After our this div, we also need two buttons. Let's create a div and inside we have a button called search and a clear button. Let's save it and see inside our browser. As you can see, we have all of our things that we created. So now that all of our inputs and buttons are here, let's get started by styling them. Back in our form tag, let's say class name. To apply styles in Tailwind, we need to say the attribute class name and then inside it we apply our styles. So let's start by giving a border to our form. Border orange 400. We have a really thin border here. It's not bold enough. To make it bolder, we need to give here a number. Based on the bigger our number is, the bolder our border will be. So there are many properties in here. We can give border 2, 4 and 8. Let's give here 4. Now it's much better. And for its background, let's give BG white and rounded SM to make our corners rounded, and let's also give shadow to it. As you can see here, let's see. So now as you can see, all of our inputs and buttons are in vertical, but we need them to be in different columns based on our screens. So for that we are going to use grid. By default our columns will be 1, so all of our elements will be in one single column, and to make it responsive on all devices we need different number of columns in each screen. We need one single column on our smaller screens, so for that we give here grid calls 1. But for our medium screens, we have so much space in here, so we can split them in two columns. For that, we will say MD. On medium screens, grid calls 2. Let's save it and see. As you can see, we have two columns and this is one single field. Okay. And for our larger screens, let's give grid calls 3. Let's save it and see. As you can see, now we have 3 columns. And if we go to extra large screens, as you can see, we have so much space in here. So in here we can say on 2XL we give here grid columns 5. Let's save it and see. Let me zoom out. As you can see, on 2XL screens and above, we have all of our inputs in horizontal. Let's zoom in and now let's style them. Okay, so first we need to give here gap between them. For that we have a property called gap and we give here value 2. Now we have gap here. Let's also give padding to each of our div. Let's make it more smaller for our ease of purpose. Our padding will be by default on smaller and extra smaller screens will be 2, but on medium and above screens our padding will be 3. So now our padding is 2, but when we go on medium screens like here, our padding will be 3, as you can see. Okay. Now as you can see, we don't have enough spacing in here. For that, let's go inside layout.jsx, and after our hero we will have a div, and we give here class name container and mx auto, and inside it we place our search bar component so that our container class will be applied to our search bar component like this. Now we have much spacing in here, and for our position we need our search bar to be a little above. So for that, inside our search bar, before border, let's say here minus margin top 16. So if we give here empty dash 16, it will push our search bar to the down, but we give here minus, so it will go on opposite direction, meaning it will go on top. Let's save it like this. And for our larger screen and above, let's say margin top 14. So let's see. Like this. Okay, so now let's style our first input. So inside our first div, let's give here class name flex. So this property will be applied to our icon and this input. Let's save it. It will be on one single line. Let's say flex row. So it will be on horizontal, and after that let's give here border, and our border color will be gray 300 like this, and let's make it rounded. Okay, and items center flex 1 so that it can take all the space available to it. Let's also give here background white. For padding, let's give 2, and also give gap between these twos like this, and style our input. Class name text md width full, so it will have full width available to it. And when we click on this, we don't need this outline. For that we will say on focus. So when our mouse is focused on this input, we will say outline none. Let's see, like this. Now let's style our adult and children fields. So inside this parent div, we will say class name, and in here we will give flex border, and its color will be border gray 300, background will be white, padding 1 rounded, and we also need to give px, so it will space out from here from left and right. Let's give it here px2 like this, and we also need these fields to be in center. Let's say justify center gap -2, and for these labels let's also position them to center. Flex items center like this, and for our input let's also make this to center. Flex items center, and for our inputs let's give here width full, so it will take up the space available to it. Padding 1 and focus outline none. So when you click on this like this, let's try to remove it and see. As you can see, by default it has this outline. So when we do focus outline none, when we focus on it, our outline will be removed. Let's see. As you can see, our number is not bold enough. For that, inside this input we will say font bold, like this. As you can see, our adult value is -5. It can't be less than 1. There must be one adult. Our minimum value should be 1 and it should not be less than 1. Let's save it and refresh. As you can see, it can't be less than 1 and our adults can't be above 10. For that we will say maximum number of adults should be only 10. Let's refresh it and see. As you can see, it can't be greater than 10. And same for our children input. Children value can be 0. So we will say minimum value should be 0 and it can't be greater than 10. Max should be 10. Let's refresh it. Children can't be less than 0 and it can't be greater than 10. Let's also style it. Class name, width full, padding 1, focus, outline none, and font bold, like this. Now by default we are not showing any value here. To show default values, we will use default value attribute. Default value should be 1 for adult and for children default value will be 0. Let's save it. As you can see, even if we refresh it, our default value is going to stay. And for adult and children field, in here we give center. Instead it will be between, justify between. So it will space out these two fields. And now let's style our date picker fields. So for that, inside this div, let's also give here placeholder. For that we will say placeholder text and it will be check-in date. Let's save it. It's not going to show, but if we backspace it, as you can see, our check-in date placeholder is visible. Same for our checkout date picker, placeholder text, checkout date. Save it. Let's remove it and see. Now as you can see, it is not taking the full space available to it. For that we will say here wrapper class name and it will be minimum width full. It's not taking full space yet because we haven't give here any class name. Border gray 300 rounded, padding 2, BG white and focus outline none. Okay, it's still not taking. For that we will say here minimum width full, like this. And if we remove one of these two minimum width full class name, it will not going to take the whole space. Okay, and let's also give same styles for our checkout field. Let's say here wrapper class name, minimum width full, class name, border gray 300, rounded, padding 2, BG white, focus, outline none, and minimum width full, like this. Okay, we have misspelled it. Okay, as you can see, so it's looking good on smaller device. Let's see. On medium we have 2 columns because we used on our form, we use grid here. Remember, for medium screens we have 2 columns, for larger 3 columns, and for 2XL we have 5 columns. As you can see, for larger we have 3 columns, and for 2XL we have 5 columns. Let's try to select our dates 4 to 17 and see. 4 to 17 our dates are selected. Now let's style our search and clear button. For our parent div, last name flex, so it will be horizontal, gap 1, items center, and justify center, like this. Let's style our search button, and for our search button we want it to be bigger than clear button. So for that, in here we will say, instead of width full, take 2 parts out of 3. So when we save it, it will take 2 parts available to it. And for our clear button, we will say width, take 1 part out of full. Okay, when we give here background, you can understand better. Let's give here background blue 600, and for our clear button, background red 600. As you can see, our search button is taking 2 full of the space, and our clear button is taking 1 out of full space available to it. Now let's style them. Rounded SM, text white, padding 2, font semi bold, text XL, and when we hover it, our background will be blue 500. Let's save it and see. As you can see, now let's style our clear button. Rounded SM means small, text color will be white, padding 2, font semi bold, text XL, and hover BG red 500, like this. Let's see. As you can see, and now let's have our button here. So when we click on that button, our full search bar is going to be visible. So for that, let's comment this form like this, and after return statement we will have a parent div. Let's also take our form inside it. For now, let's comment it. So now let's make our button. For that, inside this div we have another div, and inside this div we are going to have an icon called IO search. We will import it from React icons. Import IO search from React icons /IO. And let's give here size for our icon. It's going to be 26. It's giving us error in the console because we have misspelled it. IO5. Save it. Okay, now our icon is here. So after this icon we will have a button called search. Now let's style our button. For that, let's say here class name flex. To make them on the same line, gap-2 items center, background white, and for our example let's give here border, and we need it to be on top. For that let's give here minus margin top 20, like this. As you can see, we don't need our elements to expand this much. For that, inside this div we will say maximum width maximum. Now if we hover on this property, as you can see we have a property maximum width set to maximum content. Our width will be maximum to our content. Let's also give the same for our border. As you can see now, let's give here padding like this, and on hover we need our border to be red 400, like this. And for our this div we will say padding 2, and let's give here some more padding to the right side. For that we will say padding right PR-6, like this. And for our icon, let's give here class name called fill to change its color, and we will give here this color. Let's save it. Now our icon color is blue, and let's also style our search button. We will say text XL, font semi-bold, and text blue 700, like this. And now for our functionality we need state. So when we click on this, our search bar is going to be visible and the search button is going to hide. So let's make our state. After this check-in and checkout state, we will say here const search, set search, use state, and by default our search bar is going to be false. It's not going to be visible by default. And for this parent div of our icon and button, in here we will say on click. So when we click on this button, we will set our state to be true, and based on our state we need to hide it and show our search bar. So for that, now in here we can't have our condition inside a string. So instead of this we need to use template literals. And now that we need a condition, for that we will say $sign and curly braces, and if our search state is true and we will set this button to be hidden. And when our state is going to be true, when we click on this button. So when we click on this button, our state is going to be true, and when our state is true, we need to hide this whole div. So this button basically. And also when we click on this, our search state is going to be true, and when our state is true, we are going to show this form. So let's uncomment it, and for that we give here curly braces because we need to have a condition in here. In here we will say when our search is true, only then we will show our form. So let's place this form inside this condition. It's giving us some error. Let's see. Oh, we haven't uncomment it. So let's do it. Because we give here double comment, that's why it's giving us this error. Let's uncomment this and this one, and for this also let's uncomment it. And for them, let's just select them like this. Now it's all uncomment. Let's save it and see. If we click on this button, there's some mistake in here. Search. Let's uncomment it and click on it. Now as you can see, our full search bar is here. Let's again check it. So by default our state is false, and when we click on this button our search state is going to be true. So we click it, and when our search state is true, we are going to show this form, this search bar basically. Now as you can see, it's really not that pleasing. Let's give here some animation effects. For that, inside components we will create a new file called searchbar.css. Let's import it inside our searchbar.jsx. Import /searchbar.css, and inside it let's have a class named searchbar, and transform. We use transform property to move our element based on our properties we give in here. So we will give here translate 3D. You can also use simple translate, but translate 3D gives us a more 3D effect. Our first property is x-axis. So we will give here -2 rem. So it will go on top. And second one is y-axis. So for that we give here -3 rem. And for our third property, we don't need it, so let's give here 0. By default our opacity is going to be 0, and we give here our animation property. Let's first create our keyframe. Let's give here a name, search animate. Okay, and inside we need two states, for 50% and for 100%. For 50% we will say transform translate 3D. Our x-axis is going to be same, but our y-axis, meaning on top and bottom, instead of -3 rem, our search bar will go to its default position, and for z we give here 0 again, and our opacity will be 1. And now for our 100%, transform. Let's give here %, transform translate 3D, and in here our x-axis is going to be 0, and y and z is also going to be 0. For our opacity, it's going to be visible. Now let's use this keyframe for our animation. So we basically use keyframes to define our animation steps. Okay, search animate is our keyframe name, animate, and its duration will be 1 second. Ease in out will be our timing function, direction alternate, and fill mode will be forwards. Let's save it, and now let's use this class inside our search bar file for our form. So in here we will say search bar. The class that we just created, let's save it and see, refresh it, and when you click on this, as you can see, now it's much more pleasing. Let's also check for our other screens. If we click on it like this, good. And for this screen also, let's see, if we click on it like this, and our input fields are also working. Our date picker from 3 to 11 like this. So that's it for today's video. If you like this video, press the like button, comment, share and subscribe to UI Universe. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Until then, take care. Bye bye.